Seek integration of HPV vaccine into Nigeria's routine immunization system ahead of International Day. And US-Ukraine failed to sign critical minerals agreement after presidential meeting ends in fiery exchange. Nations shared a deal to map out funding to protect nature, breaking a deadlock at the UN talks, seen as a test of international cooperation in the face of geopolitical tensions. Rich and developing countries hammered out a delicate compromise on raising and delivering billions of dollars needed to protect species, overcoming divisions that had scuttled their previous meeting in Cali, Colombia last year. Let's join Charles Alpha for details.
This meeting is a huge success for delegates as it saw key decisions adopted in the final minutes of the last day of rebooted negotiations at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization headquarters in Rome. COP16 President Susana Mohammed of Colombia hailed the fact that countries worked together for a breakthrough, enabling progress in a very fragmented and conflicted world. The decision comes more than 2 years after a landmark deal to halt the rampant destruction of nature this decade and protect the ecosystems and wildlife that humans rely on for food, climate regulation and economic prosperity.
And in this convention and the way it has developed since the Montreal framework, and the principle that the convention adopted, that it requires the mobilization of whole of government and whole of society, that we start seeing how those principles start landing in concrete decisions.
Scientists warn that action is urgent as 1 million species are threatened with extinction, while unsustainable farming and consumption destroys forests, depletes soils and spreads plastic pollution to even the most remote areas of the planet. The agreement is seen as crucial to giving impetus to the 2022 deal, in which countries agreed to protect 30% of the world's land and seas. Washington, which has not signed up to the UN's Convention on Biological Diversity, sent no representatives to the meeting. The failure to finalize an agreement in Cali last year was the first in a string of disappointment. A climate finance deal at COP29 in Abuja in November was slammed by developing countries, while separate negotiations about desertification and plastic pollution was stalled in December. Mohammed, who resigned as Colombia's environment minister, but stayed on to serve until after the Rome conference, was given a standing ovation as the talks drew to a close in the early hours of Friday. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
And the US and Ukraine failed to sign a critical minerals agreement after a Friday meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky devolved into a fiery exchange, fracturing relations between the two countries. Again, Charles Alpha brings us details of their fallout.
After weeks of intense negotiations and statements between Washington and Kyiv, the expectations were running high for the first meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky. Reports say no one expected the meeting to turn into a heated argument live on TV. And now Trump is saying raw materials deal with Ukraine, which brought Zelensky to the White House on Friday, was off. The Friday meeting did not seem tense at first, but it changed in tone and became less diplomatic when U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance told Zelensky that Ukraine did not have enough people to continue fighting. The Ukrainian president replied that J.D. Vance has not been to Ukraine to say this. Things got increasingly heated from this moment onward. Zelensky emphasized the need for security guarantees, which Kyiv has repeatedly insisted upon. Trump interrupted Zelensky and told him to be grateful for what the U.S. had already done to help Ukraine.
You're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I wanted this. Look, If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
Zelensky replied, "Of course, I want to stop the war," when Trump interrupted him with, "You say you don't want a ceasefire." Ukraine's president said he wanted a truce, but with security guarantees.
We gave you military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment.
Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Pope Francis is due to be discharged after suffering an isolated coughing fit on Friday that resulted in a sudden breathing crisis. The Vatican says the Pope is on non-invasive mechanical ventilation following a setback in his 2-week-long battle against double pneumonia. Details again with Charles Alpha.
The 88-year-old pontiff, the Vatican said, remained conscious and alert at all times and cooperated with the maneuvers to help him recover. He responded well with a good level of oxygen exchange and was continuing to wear a mask to receive supplemental oxygen. The Vatican says the development marked a setback in what had been 2 successful days of increasingly upbeat reports from doctors treating Pope Francis at Rome's Gemelli Hospital since February 14. The episode, which occurred in the early afternoon, resulted in a sudden worsening of the respiratory picture. Doctors decided to keep Francis' prognosis guarded and indicated they needed 24 to 48 hours to evaluate how and if the episode has impacted his overall clinical condition. The episode, which doctors described as an isolated crisis of bronchial spasm, was a coughing fit in which Francis inhaled vomit. The longest respiratory crisis Pope Francis suffered on February 22 was a crisis in breathing. The Vatican said doctors did not resume, referring to Francis in critical condition, which has been absent from their statement for 3 days now. However, they have been cautious in declaring him out of danger entirely, given the complexity of his case. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Amidst notable disease outbreaks such as Lassa fever, cholera, and others ravaging Nigeria, the effective integration of human papillomavirus HPV vaccine into the country's routine immunization system depicts government's commitment to a new chapter for citizens' health, especially women and girl-child survival.
Human papillomavirus HPV is a common sexually transmitted infection affecting the skin, genital area, and the throat. It is one of the leading causes of several cancers, among which it is cervical cancer. The highest rates of cervical cancer incidence and mortality are in low and middle-income countries. This reflects major inequities driven by lack of access to national HPV vaccination, cervical cancer screening and treatment services, and social and economic determinants. Although countries around the world are working to accelerate the elimination of cervical cancer in the coming decades, with an agreed state of 3 targets to be met by 2030. For Nigeria, a major milestone. Since the campaign began in October 2023, Nigeria has vaccinated over 12 million girls against HPV, reducing their chances of developing cervical cancer up to 90%. Nigeria has been working to increase HPV vaccine uptake through a combination of community outreach, education, and policy changes. Despite challenges, Nigeria's HPV vaccination efforts have helped to reduce the chances of developing cervical cancer by up to 90%. International HPV Awareness Day is a global campaign organized each year on March 4th, committed to addressing HPV-related cancer.
And of course, joining us in the studio to discuss further on the HPV International Day is the Chairman of Education Committee, International Papillomavirus Society, Professor Mark Stebbin. Good to have you join us, Professor Stebbin.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, Professor. What are the prevalence and, of course, incidence rates of HPV-related cancers in Nigeria, and what interventions can be put in place to reduce the rates of these cancers?
Nigeria is, like the rest of Africa, a region where there's more cancer. We're talking about cervical cancer, but there are 8 other cancers related to HPV. So Nigeria is affected by a lot of women being diagnosed, but also men diagnosed and dying because the treatment for these cancer are quite complicated, and many times, since they're not necessarily screened, they come at the late stage where there are metastasis and the treatment is sometime too far in the course of the disease. So major cause of death of cancer in young women, especially HPV cancer will strike women at a younger age than other cancers affecting women.
All right, Professor, what strategies do you think can be adopted to increase access to HPV vaccination, especially for low and middle-aged income countries, where the burden of HPV, by the way, is very high? And how can Nigeria also benefit from these strategies?
I have to say that Nigeria has a very good start in their HPV vaccination program. So we need to tweak little things. Be sure that we're able to capture those women that escape the first time of the vaccination program. So we know that there are strategies such as once eligible, always eligible. For whatever reason, a young girl was not immunized, she could be immunized whenever she feels ready to be immunized. Also, there's discussion now that we don't have problems in the production of the vaccine to extend to men. We know that when men are immunized, strategies for women are better. Men also have specific cancers that vaccination of women will not protect. So as much as possible, we would like to increase the coverage to 90% of the population, which is the World Health Organization target. So once we are at that number, the virus becomes so rare that it will neutralize the virus in the population. We call that herd immunity. More you get people vaccinated, less likely it will be transmitted.
Okay, I'm just wondering, how can global health organizations and the Nigerian authorities address the stigma and misinformation surrounding HPV, particularly among young people, to increase awareness, education, and uptake of HPV vaccination and screening services?
I will tell you that stigma of cancer is bigger than the stigma of the virus. We know that, unfortunately, a lot of people are diagnosed very late in the course of the disease and they die. My experience working in Africa is that almost all the professionals I see have people in their family who died from HPV-related cancer. So cancer is devilish. It will attack men, women, it will attack young and old. You know, it's a small jab, but it's a big prevention for family. We know that cancer will destroy family, loss of the potential of a country. When we look at the number of people that are dying from vaccine-preventable disease, it's a call to action. We need to do better. We're good. You're doing good. But there's still a little bit more we should do. And of course, we need to transition now to include the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, the cousin, with cervical cancer screening. So we have now technology that is so powerful and it's so easy to do that women can self-swab themselves either in a clinic or at home. And it's so powerful that these tests can be repeated every 10 years. So we are looking forward to discuss with experts this week with the International HPV Awareness Day on the 4th of March. How can we gain this traction on cervical cancer by screening the right people at the right time and having the potential to treat? So let's talk about it. On the 4th of March, tell your neighbor, tell your kids, tell your parents that this is preventable, and it's time for Nigeria to keep the full potential of its population, and HPV vaccination will help doing that.
Well, before I let you go, Professor Mack, what are the challenges and opportunities for integrating HPV screening into national health systems, particularly in Nigeria? And how can this integration be achieved to reduce the burden of HPV-related cancers?
We know that the machine necessary to do HPV tests are available in Nigeria. So I think that people feel it's time to sit and see the recommendation of WHO, how they fit the healthcare system of Nigeria, and looking forward to how to finance these tests. But when you look at the dollar put in the prevention of cancer, one of the dollar that will be giving the most reward to a country will be HPV screening for women to prevent cervical cancer. And we know when we are giving the vaccine, we're protecting also against the 8 other HPV cancers that are seen in men and in women. So screening and vaccine, two extremely powerful, safe, and demonstrated efficacy. So I hope that we are going to see a large number of Nigerians being vaccinated or screened by the 4th of March.
All right, Professor Mark Steben, Chairman, Education Committee, International Papilloma Virus Society. Thank you so much for coming on board and for those insights. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Time now to take a break. The news returns shortly. Stay with us.
Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, FRCN, and Voice of Nigeria, VON, cordially invite the general public to its 19th annual Ramadan lecture. Topic: Faith, Politics and Power, the involvement of ulama in politics and its implications. Guest lecturer, Sheikh Maruf Onike Abdulaziz, Chief Missioner, NASFAT Worldwide. Chairman of the occasion, Idi Mukhtar Meha, Minister of Livestock Development. Special guest of honor, Muhammad Idris, Minister of Information and National Orientation. Royal Father of the Day, His Highness Mala Ahmed Nuhu Bamali, Emir of Zazzau. Chief host, His Excellency Malang Ubasani, the Executive Governor, Kaduna State. Host, Malang Salu Abdul Hamid Dembos, Director General, NTA. Dr. Muhammad Bulama, Director General, FRCN. Malang Jibril Babandachi, Director General, Voice of Nigeria. Venue, Lumana Multipurpose Center, River Close, off Jabi Road East, off Sultan Road, Kaduna. Date, 8 March 2025. Time, 9 a.m. Inshallah. For partnership or advert placement. Announcer, Organizing Committee.
Thanks for joining us again. The House of Representatives has promised to put finishing touches and tie up loose ends in the 4 tax reform bills before Parliament, based on the submissions and inputs of Nigerians. The Chairman House Committee on Finance, James Faleke, gave this pledge at the close of a 3-day public hearing on the proposed bill. National Assembly correspondent Metai Raikben reports.
More individuals and groups appear before Parliament to dissect the tax reform bills as they affect or assuage their interests. The volatility of foreign exchange rate is the concern of licensed forex operators who appeal for tax exemption, among other propositions.
Most of the transactions done by the Bureau de Change will eventually be transferred to the end users. It will worsen the inflation as we depend highly on importations.
The tax ombudsman have jurisdiction nationwide, even on matters of fiscal policy. This is unconstitutional.
NIPC, as the processing agency of the incentives, should be empowered under this act to make recommendations to the President for amendment of the list.
Most taxpayers, sometimes we are unable to track them. So we are asking that Section 85 of the current Personal Income Tax Act
should be retained in the Nigerian tax bill.
The tendency of business enterprises in free trade zones to abuse tax exemption was also highlighted, with advocacy for stronger regulations.
We have even seen worse cases of some free zone enterprises that want to import luxury vehicles, armored cars, yachts, some of them aircrafts.
Parliament received accolades for engaging Nigerians in the consideration of the tax bills, which many believe seek to advance national economic fortunes.
Nigerians expect that arising from this bill will be a regime that will recognize their sacrifices. They would also see the result of their sacrifices.
There is no law that is, no bill that is perfect. That is why it comes to us as a proposal. And when it comes as a proposal, we present it to the public. We've done that now. Public have responded to us. We will now look at every detail. When we finish and we lay a report and it is discussed on the floor or debated and passed, we will compare with what the Senate passed. Any areas of differences, we will harmonize.
It's been 3 days of robust engagement between Nigerians and the People's House on the 4 tax reform bills for consideration. And while the ball is now in the court of lawmakers to dot the I's and cross the T's, Nigerians expect that what is eventually presented for passage will be in the best interest of tax administration in the country. From the National Assembly, Mitaire Ikben, NTA News.
And the call for women to uplift and stand by one another took center stage at the second national conference of the Southern Women Empowerment Forum in Abuja. Speakers emphasized that genuine progress in women's emancipation hinges on unity and support. Adobe Obechina has the details.
Ramatu Ahassan Jubri, a 27-year-old woman, has been a full-time housewife since she got married 3 years ago, with no financial independence. Hers is the reality of many women who find themselves without a voice in decisions that shape their growth, stability, and influence, both in the society and within their homes.
Yes, I'm very glad and happy because I never expect this gift. And I'm happy by this. I've have an opportunity of running this business in the grinding machine. By this, I'll be getting some little more notes of money, at least to secure some of my problems.
Very overwhelmed. I'm surprised that I'm among the people that were empowered today. Very, very surprised.
President of the Southern Women Empowerment Forum, Dr. Helena Debakin, alongside other speakers, stressed the importance of women supporting one another in all aspects of growth and empowerment. They emphasized that fostering unity among women is key to building a stronger society where true emancipation can be achieved.
Calling from God to go into the world to help the less privileged, to help the needy, to help the widows, to be a voice to the voiceless. And that's why God sent me to help people.
No one is going to empower you. You must empower yourself from within. You must be clear about your vision. You must be clear about your mission. If we have so many of us here at that political space, we know that we will make impact and our lives. We all know all our needs. We all know all our problems. And when we get that, we'll be able to take it back to our societies and make an impact.
It has a broad knowledge of why women should come together and speak in one voice and be able to empower the less privileged.
A major highlight of the event was the empowerment support provided to selected women, giving them opportunities to become financially independent. Additionally, awards were presented to notable individuals, recognizing their contribution towards women's empowerment. For the 27-year-old Ramatu and other recipients of the financial assistance and awards, the gesture of the organizer will go a long way in making their lives better. Adobe Obiechina, NTA News.
The federal government has announced its decision to target illegal and corrupt cooperative societies in the country. The Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security stated that the government plans to implement significant reforms in the regulation of cooperative societies. Musa Baba Ali reports.
Records indicate that as of 2023, there were 30 million Nigerians belonging to different cooperative societies. The societies have been playing a significant role in micro and small businesses in the country, contributing more than 300 million naira to the economy annually. Managing and regulating the cooperatives is under the purview of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. The Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Ali Sabi Abdullahi, was at the Federal Cooperative College in Kaduna to address managers and trustees of various societies in the country.
We aim to bring innovation by first innovating, revitalizing the sector to restore confidence in the masses and bring back the glory of the cooperative movement as a force to reckon with in the socio-economic development of Nigeria.
He decried cases of fraud and manipulation of members by some organizations.
Many of you are aware that there are fake cooperative societies who scam our citizens in the guise of providing cooperative service. We definitely are taking it very seriously. Indeed, the days of fake cooperative societies is gone, and we are taking measures to bring sanity into the cooperative ecosystem.
The minister noted that the reform will refocus on review and amendment of the Nigerian Cooperative Act to bring it up to date with global best practices and local realities. Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
The federal government has approved the appointment of Professor Lucian Elchukwu as the substantive Vice-Chancellor of Admiralty University, Abuja, Delta State. The Governing Council of Admiralty University, Abuja, conducted the selection exercise for the appointment of a substantive Vice-Chancellor on 26th and 27th of February 2025 at the Council Chamber of the University. At the end of the exercise, Professor Lucian Elchukwu emerged as the highest scorer with 83.41% among the 5 interviewed candidates. In line with the principle of merit being upheld by the federal government, the Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Maruf Tijani Lausa, has approved the appointment of Professor Lucian Elchukwu as a substantive Vice-Chancellor of Admiralty University, Abuja. The appointment is for a single tenure of 5 years with effect from 28th of February 2025. The Honorable Minister wishes the new Vice-Chancellor a successful tenure of office. And that's the news. Thanks for your company. I am Mina Daniels.